Hi, I'm Angie Christensen of Simply Divine Eating, and I'm here to talk to you today about bread. Bread is something that has gone from being a very simple thing in the human diet to a hugely complicated thing in our diet. And I want to talk to you today about the debate about whether this is even something we should eat at all, and about good, better, and best options when we are choosing bread for our families. So let's start with the debate. On the one hand, we have the age-old philosophy that bread is the staff of life. And on the other hand, we have all this new data and science telling us that carbs are really wrecking our health. And people are really caught in the middle of trying to figure out, because logic tells us, bread's been eaten for a long time. Can it really be as evil as we are being told? And yet we've got all this data and we've got all these massive modern diseases, and we see those diseases actually improving when things like bread are removed from the diet. And so what do you do about this? What do you do about all of this? Well, in Simply Divine Eating, we teach you 4 cornerstones, 4 truths that are true absolutely all the time that help you sort through these kinds of debates so that you aren't dependent on data, you aren't dependent on the latest fads. You know how to sort to the bottom of those things. And of course, we don't have time to go into all of those today, but I want to tell you just one of those, and that is eating food in the correct form. Eating food in the form nature intended you to eat it. And I tell you, this solves so many problems, and it really gets to the heart of the bread issue. When you look at bread and you look at all of this data that's emerging of how it's harming our health, it comes down to 3, really, in the end, simple things that are problematic with bread. One is the gluten, one are the glucose spikes, and one is the anti-nutrients that are in bread. And all of the disease that we see linked to bread and to other grains and carbs as well come from those 2 things. So let's talk about those really quick and show you how the form makes all the difference in fixing all 3 problems, because the problems are real. It's not that it's shoddy science. It's that we are looking at the data that we're having health problems from bread, and we're jumping to the conclusion that the answer is to completely remove it from our diet, when the real thing is, let's take a look at the form and how the form has changed. And there again, that's just one aspect of it, but it's the one I want to talk to you about today. So if you think about bread and wheat and grains and these amazing creations that the earth provides for you, I want you to think about a seed. When you have a seed, that seed is protected by a hard shell. And the job of that shell is to protect that seed until it sprouts and it grows. The problem is there are a lot of things that are in that seed to protect it that are actually harmful for you. They aren't there for your benefit, they're there for the seed's benefit. But if that seed has also been created to feed you, how do we reconcile that? Why would there be things in the seed that would actually harm you, but are needed for the seed and its protection and its germination and its growing? Well, the answer for that is nature knows how to change the form to fix that problem. So I want you to think about a seed. If you go and you plant it, what will happen to it? It's going to sprout, right? Or if you grind up flour and you mix it with water and you put it on your counter and you leave it for a couple days, what's going to happen? It's going to start to ferment. It's going to pull all these natural yeasts out of the air, and it's going to start to bubble, and it's going to start to change. Without any of your own effort, nature is constantly working to turn these seed foods into a form that actually improve our health. And the amazing thing is that these natural processes, they fix the gluten issue, they reduce the gluten amount, they simplify the gluten, they make it start breaking it down so it's easier for us to digest. They break down the anti-nutrients that are there. And let me tell you quickly what an anti-nutrient is. An anti-nutrient is something that is naturally found in a plant but is actually harmful for the human body. And there are all these anti-nutrients in a seed that are designed to hold on to all of the nutrition in the seed and keep it there and keep it held and keep it captive and keep it bound until the seed sprouts, in which case they release those so that then the seed can grow. It's an amazing process. But the problem is, if we just take our wheat and we just grind it into flour and we just bake it, all of those nutrients are still being bound by the anti-nutrients. And so when you eat it, not only does it make it so that you can't absorb the nutrition from your bread, but those anti-nutrients can actually pull other minerals and things from your system and actually deplete your nutrition. But when we put bread and grains and all of these carbs through this natural process that the earth does naturally for you, it breaks down the anti-nutrients for you and it releases all of that nutrition so that when you eat it, you actually get it into your body. So it fixes that. And then there is the glucose spike. There is a huge glucose spike from carbohydrates, and depending on a gene called AMY1, you can get even more of a glucose spike from a carbohydrate, from a starch, than you might get from white sugar. They've done DNA testing and things on that, and some people respond negatively more to even a starch in bread than they do to refined white sugar. And what happens when you have a glucose spike is it causes something called glycation, which is when the proteins in your body bind to these sugars, and it essentially mutates and immobilizes them, and so it permanently damages them in your body. So if you've got glycation going on in your cardiovascular system, you're going to have heart disease. If you've got glycation going on in your brain, you're going to have dementia, and some of these other problems that we're seeing neurologically are connected to this. So that glucose spike is a really big deal. But these natural processes that nature has created for grains fix the glucose spike because they already pre-digest the sugars for you, and so you don't get that glucose spike. So it isn't that bread is evil. It's that we have quit eating it in the right form. And so all of a sudden it is having hugely negative impacts on the human body. Now, if you want more information on all the specifics of that, my online course, we go into all of this in huge detail as far as what to do with all these grains, how to handle them, recipes, and all of that kind of information. But here I want to give you a quick summation of some good, better, and best ways that you can have bread for your family. So let's start maybe at the not so good end of things. This is just a Sara Lee loaf from the grocery store. And as always happens, the marketing on the front is always going to tell you that this is healthy. And so they put 100% whole wheat across the front, which we have been taught to think healthy bread. But not really. Because as we've talked about, you're still going to have the gluten problem, you're still going to have the glucose spike, and you're still going to have the anti-nutrient. So this whole wheat is going to do more damage than good in your body in this form. And then let's look at what some of the other ingredients are in this. So we start out with flour, then water, wheat, gluten. So now we've added more gluten into it than even is naturally in wheat, which is going to cause a lot of issues. And then sugar. Sugar is next on the list. That is not what your body wants. Then we have yeast, and this is a commercial yeast. This is not the natural yeast that your body is designed to thrive on. This is a commercial yeast, and it has a very different effect. And then soybean oil. Soybean oil is a highly processed, mutated oil that has a very negative effect in your body. Then we have, let's see, salt, molasses, wheat bran, and then we get into all the synthetics, things that we can't pronounce. Calcium propionate, datum. What is datum? If you don't know, probably a good sign. Doesn't belong in your body. Monoglycerides, calcium sulfite, and here's my favorite, cellulose gum. You know what that is? Sawdust. That is an extender that's put in to make your bread cheap by putting in sawdust. My kids joke when they see bread. They'll ask me, I have one son that's really fixated on this, and he'll say, Mom, is that sawdust bread? Because I've taught him what they hide in this food. So we've got our sawdust, then we've got monocalcium phosphate, we've got cornstarch, soy lecithin, there again another soy problem, citric acid, grain vinegar, and potassium iodate. So there's a whole lot of things in there that your body wants absolutely nothing to do this. So this is not something that's going to build your health in any way. Even though it says 100% whole wheat, this is going to have a really negative effect on your body on multiple dimensions. So let's look at what are some of our better options. Now, if you just go to a regular grocery store and you're buying bread, this is an example of one that's in any store around me, and it's a local brand for me here. So the brands around you may vary, but this is one that is completely clean, meaning that there are no synthetics and no preservatives added. So this is a good option. This has not gone through those natural processes that are going to make it so that your body can actually absorb the nutrients. You're still going to have a gluten problem, you're still going to have an anti-nutrient problem, you're still going to have those things, but there are at least no synthetics. Nothing that's actually going to be toxic to your body that then your liver's got to clean out of your system. If you look at the ingredients on here, it is whole wheat flour, oat fiber, wheat bran, sugar, gluten, yeast, salt, potato flour, and vinegar. So not ideal, but so much better than this, because at least you've taken out the options and the things that are going to highly stress your body. And this brand is Granny's, and where I live in Utah, this is just a local bread that can be found anywhere from Walmart to a grocery store. And it's a clean option. So if you're taking your first step this direction, this is a good step to take. The next option, of course, would be if you are making your homemade bread with commercial yeast. Because it's still just flour that's ground and baked and used commercial yeast, you're still going to have the gluten, the glucose, and anti-nutrient issues with it. But there again, it will be free of any toxic preservatives and additives that would stress your body. So this is also where homemade, traditional, I guess it's not truly traditional, modern homemade bread would fall. So then let's take a step up to what would be better. Better is bread that has gone through a specific sourdoughing or sprouting process to fix those gluten, glucose, and anti-nutrient issues. And this is how bread has been made through all of human history. You can look at any culture in the world, and whatever kind of bread they had, they figured this out. From fermented teff bread in Ethiopia to the fermented masa flour used in Native American cultures to European sourdough bread, every place in the world, they figured this out thousands of years ago, that for this bread to be healthy for you, it needed to go through these natural processes. And so if you want to get bread back to truly supporting your health, you want to get back to bread that has been through these natural processes. And the good news is that these days there are actually a few bakeries that are going back to these old-fashioned, if you want to call that, but really the ideal ways to make bread. Where I live in Utah, there's a company called Abigail's Oven, and that's what this bread is. And you can tell I bought you a beautiful loaf so you can see it, but my kids know this bread is fair game. This is okay for them to eat, and so they got at it before I filmed this. So it's not a perfect whole beautiful loaf anymore, but this is a 100% sourdough bread. It goes through a 24-hour process before it is baked. Sourdough alone on a label doesn't tell you that, because most sourdough processes now are a combination of old-fashioned approaches, and then they add the modern commercial yeast, and so it's not truly going through the full process. But this is a company that's doing the full 24-hour process to get this in a form that really is beneficial to your body. This is Abigail's Oven, so if you live in Utah, this is a great option. But no matter where you live, you can do some searching and you can find some companies. Just ask them if there's any commercial yeast added. If there isn't, then it's going to have gone through the long process, because the long process is the only way to get bread to rise if you don't use commercial yeast. Commercial yeast is a shortcut. That's why we started using it. It sped up the process. It made it easy. But it took out an essential process that was essential for our bodies. And so though it saved time, it was a huge loss to the human body. And so look around, see if in health food stores or in local mom and pop shops around you, you can find companies that are making sourdough bread with no commercial yeast added. And then you're going to know it's going to have gone through this full process to put it in the form that will support your health. And then, of course, our best option, and that is to make sourdough bread at home. Now, if you say, I don't like sourdough, don't worry. Just because San Francisco sourdough is the most famous form of sourdough, and it's a truly sour, it's got a very sour, acidic taste to it, most of us equate that with sourdough, but the truth is there are actually sweet sourdoughs that don't taste sour at all. So if you don't like sourdough, don't let that scare you away from this process at all, because you can find a sweet sourdough that your family will eat and you will have all the health benefits. And so this is a homemade loaf that we made with a starter, and I have to tell you, this starter is the best starter on the planet that we have been able to find. We have tried a lot of the famous sourdough starters, and a lot of us in my company, we really struggled still with making the sourdough bread. It was still hard to make, it was still unpredictable, and it had still that sourdough taste that our families weren't thrilled about. And then we found this particular starter, and it is amazing. And so you can actually buy this from us now, the Simply Divine starter, and if you want to get into making sourdough bread, it really does make all the difference. One of my friends who works with me in Simply Divine Eating, she had struggled for years to try to make sourdough that her family would eat. She tried this starter, and first time she had bread her family loved. So it's an amazing option. And if you want to know all the process of how to do this, there's actually another cooking class on my website that has the recipes and all of the information for not only making this sweet sourdough bread, but also for making an amazing sourdough pizza. So if you go on my website under the various cooking classes that I have, it's from one of the retreats I did. So if you look under the digital retreat, you can actually buy the videos and the recipes and all the information on making homemade sourdough bread. So that is a resource that's available for you as well. So if you have been worried that bread is something you have to completely remove from your diet to be healthy, let me assure you it isn't the case. You can start taking steps this direction, and don't worry if you can't go all the way to here. Just take one step. Just start this process, because every step you take this direction, your health, your family's health, it really will start to improve. And you can continue to learn. We have so many resources for you on the website to help you learn how to really do this in everyday life, from the actual classes that teach you the science of all of this and how to understand your unique body and how to make this work for you specifically, to the actual cooking classes that we have online and our live retreats and things to teach you how to do this in your own home and in your own kitchen. So I hope this takes the fear out of bread. I hope this helps you understand that this really can be a health promoting thing in your life. If you are not doing well with bread, if you're having gluten sensitivity, if you're having some inflammation, if you're having some glucose issues, you don't necessarily have to chuck it completely. For a lot of people, when they get it back in the right form, things start to change, and this is something that can be a balanced, healthy part of your life where you can still feel your best and have the bread in your diet. So I hope this is helpful. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks.